Hi there, this is Chronos from Chronos Films, and welcome to part 3 of my Alphabet of Favourite Films series. And today's episode is brought to you by the letter C and the number 17, as in the number of films. Again, these are just my favourite films, some of my favourite films beginning with the letter C. Obviously your list will disagree. And please let me know in the comments below, what are your all-time favourite films beginning with the letter C. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to wish Isaac a happy birthday. He's one of my subscribers who is full of enthusiasm and always leaves good comments and knowledgeable comments. So happy birthday, and hopefully all your nights will be movie nights and all your days will be movie days, I guess. Anyway, let's begin, shall we? So we might as well start with a silent film from 1920. This is actually a really mixed bag, strangely enough. And it's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. When you think of German Expressionism, you think of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It's just an amazing film. Production design, the sets are just astounding. Obviously it's got Conrad Veidt as Cesar, the sleepwalker, who predicts the future, but also does Dr. Caligari's evil bidding at night, involving robbery and murder. It is quintessential German Expressionism and an early wonderful performance by Conrad Veidt, and one of the most influential films of all time as far as inspiring music videos and more films, just with the sheer look and feel of the film. It's just a fantastic film, and the Eureka Masters of Cinema is a wonderful Blu-ray restoration job, as Eureka usually does. Eureka is really good at silent films. It's one of the areas that they're better than just about every other specialty label, including Criterion. Their silent film work is just fantastic. So for me, it's a must purchase. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Moving on is Casablanca. Now, Casablanca was originally just going to be a B picture. It wasn't meant to be an A picture. It's an example of cliche and kind of a hodgepodge of things, but it's the kind of alchemy of cinema that it actually comes out as a glistening masterpiece. It's got my kind of romance, a doomed failed one. It's got 103 quotes. It has this world-weary feel about it. Everybody knows the story. Strangely enough, it's also got Conrad Veidt in it. I've suddenly realised, who sadly may have been shot. Round up the usual suspects. It's got everything. Humphrey Bogart is absolutely fantastic in it. Ingrid Bergman is fantastic. Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet. I could go on. For me, everybody talks about how great the Maltese Falcon is. Maltese Falcon for me, still very good, but Casablanca is just about perfect. Moving on, it's another black and white film. Jacques Tourneu's Cat People. This is the lovely Criterion edition of it. And this is from 1942. So I'm keeping up with the modern films. This is one of Jacques Tourneu's best. He specialised in creepy little, might be supernatural, might not be supernatural films, produced by Val Newton, obviously including I Walked with a Zombie and Night of the Demon, which may appear in a later episode, who knows. Cat People is about female sexuality. It's about fear of being married, but actually from a woman's perspective. There's been plenty of films about the fear of marriage from a man's perspective, but this is actually from a woman's perspective. It's about a Romanian girl who may or may not turn into a savage animal at night. It's beautifully shot. Again, no budget really. It's all inferred. The famous scene in the swimming pool, the famous one of the first jump scares in cinema history, done by the opening of a bus door, believe it or not. This was remade by Paul Schrader with Natasha Kinski in about 1983, which I haven't seen for a long time, and quite frankly, even though despite the fact it's Paul Schrader, I don't really have much will to actually see that remake again, because the original is just awesome. So moving on slightly more modernly, is that a word? Modernly? I'm not really sure. So in 1973, Charlie Varick, which is an absolute blast, and obviously Don Siegel's more famous for Dirty Harry, but this is arguably a better film, starring Walter Matthau and Andy Robinson, who obviously would be in Dirty Harry, and Joe Don Baker as one of the nastiest, not necessarily villain, but the man who is charged with tracking down Charlie Varick, Walter Matthau, after a bank robbery out in the sticks, where he makes the mistake of actually robbing a bank that is a front for the mafia. It's just got everything. Walter Matthau in one of his best performances, and I can't recommend this Indicator release of it highly enough. It's a region B, but it's got an interview with Don Siegel. It's got a lecture with Don Siegel. John Siegel's his brother, and it's got an 89-minute Guardian interview with Walter Matthau, which is absolutely priceless. It's almost worth getting just for that audio interview, but it's not, because the film's absolutely wonderful. It's one of those films from the 70s that reminds you how great American cinema was in the 70s, and it's never been better, really. For me, America's last golden era was the 1970s. Just so many great films, and Charlie Varick is one of them. So the next one is Charulata, or The Lonely Wife, by Saijit Ray. I'm not going to talk too much about this one, because this one will appear in my Saijit Ray series relatively soon. Again, it's a simple story. It's a woman, strangely enough, who's married to a newspaper man who's really ambitious and leaves her at home She's not really intellectually stimulated because she's probably smarter than he is. So he decides to invite his cousin, played by Sumitra Chatterjee, who's obviously, if you've been following my series on Saijit Ray, Saijit Ray's kind of De Niro or Mifune, who appears in lots of his films, to spend time with her and cheer her up and stimulate her because he's a writer, and their relationship kind of blossoms. And again, as with Saijit Ray, it's a simple story, but it's beautifully told, beautifully acted, beautifully shot, and guess what? It's just beautiful. This is part of the Artificial Eye Saijit Ray Blu-ray collection, which I certainly would recommend to anybody picking up. This is from 1964, Charulata or The Lonely Wife, but I'll be talking more about this in one of my Saijit Ray videos. Next up is another Indicator release. It's a film from 1979, so we're almost up to modern day, kind of. It's The China Syndrome. I hadn't seen this for a long time, but seeing it again in this, again, brilliant Indicator release, I would highly recommend this one, because it's got a lecture with Jack Lemmon for 80 minutes, which again is priceless, and lots of other extras. This is about an almost nuclear disaster and the cover-up, and a news team who happens to be there for basically not necessarily a fluff piece, but not a serious piece on nuclear power, and they happen to witness an almost meltdown. Jane Fonda is absolutely fantastic. Michael Douglas, who, it's hard to believe, but at the time was more known as a producer, because he actually produced Milos Forman's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So he actually took a smallish part as the cameraman, and it's another great performance by Jack Lemmon. It's another great 70s performance by Jack Lemmon. He did Save the Tiger in 1973, which still, I believe, doesn't have a Blu-ray release. I mean, Indicator has The China Syndrome. They also did Missing, Costa Gravis, which is another amazing film and another amazing performance. So they really ought to, Indicator really ought to release Save the Tiger. I don't know who's got the rights. I think it might be Paramount, which might actually be the issue. But China Syndrome, again, made in 1979, reminds you why the 70s were just so good, because it was just full of films that had a point, films that were intelligent, films that expected the audience to actually pay attention, and well crafted, well written and well acted. Stylistically, the 70s might not have been, the greatest stylistically as far as the frame and compositions, Terrence Malick aside perhaps, but certainly for ideas and social political films that were still entertaining, because that's that fine balance between making films about stuff and about things and about topics, but still making them entertaining. In the 70s, just American cinema in the 70s just did that in abundance, and The China Syndrome is no exception. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. The next film is Citizen Kane. It always appears on top 10 greatest films of all time, and it's almost become a cliche, and it's almost being kind of denigrated because of that tag of the greatest film ever made, which it's not. It's hard to quantify what is the greatest film ever made. For me, because I love Orson Welles so much, you can look at it in so many levels. You can look at it as almost his entire life and career encapsulated in that character of Charles Foster Kane. You can look at it as a powerhouse of acting by Welles, who was 25 at the time. You can look at it as a technical masterpiece, which certainly technically it's just absolutely beautiful. Greg Toland, the DP, just did an amazing job. Because again, Orson Welles claimed that Greg Toland pretty much taught him everything he knew, because he had no idea how to make a film. The script is really good, by Joseph Mankiewicz. So you can look at it from a technical standpoint. You can look at it as almost being a proto-noir, because you could make the argument that Orson Welles almost started film noir with Citizen Kane and pretty much ended film noir with Touch of Evil. If you're that way inclined, you can claim that. But obviously it's got a spectacular opening, arguably one of the greatest openings ever, right up there with Once Upon a Time in the West. It's a stunning film regardless of which level you want to view it as, whether it's kind of looking forward to Orson Welles' career in life, whether it's just a rollicking good story about human hubris, or whether you want to view it on a technical level. You can view it in all these levels. So it might not be the greatest film ever made, because who can really say that? But it's certainly one of my favourite films, and if I ever do this magical, mythical top 100 or top 150, taking the best of all this alphabet, Citizen Kane's going to be on that list. The first time I saw it, it blew me away, and I kind of fell in love with Orson Welles instantly. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. The next one, sadly, isn't on Blu-ray. It's Citizen X. This is an HBO film, TV movie. It's one of the best serial killer films of all time, if I can speak. I always get excited when I think about serial killers. It stars Stephen Rea and Donald Sutherland, and it also has a subtle performance by Joss Ackland. I almost said that with a straight face. And it's a true story of Russia's first serial killer, Anatoly Chikatilo. I haven't pronounced them at all. I actually remember seeing the news, because at the end of the film you see in the courtroom where he's in the glass cage, and I actually remember seeing that on the BBC News. He killed youths and sexually assaulted them and mutilated them in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, before he was caught mid 80s. Yes, it's set in Russia, and obviously the actors are speaking English with a little Russian twang. Yes, it's a TV movie, so stylistically, there's not stunning compositions or anything, but it's the characters that you really root for. Stephen Rea is fantastic. Donald Sutherland gives a really cheeky performance as he kind of balances between being ruled by the Communist Party, and then it follows, I suppose it must have been 1990, because it follows Perestroika, Gorbachev coming in, because it starts with the Communist Party denying that there could be a serial killer in Russia, because it's a decadent problem. It's a symptom of decadent society, having serial killers, and it's strictly a Western thing. And Joss Ackland really represents that kind of stoic Communist Party view of it's the West, and the West is the decadent one with all the problems, and we don't have those problems. There's a really moving scene where Stephen Ray, who is just treated really badly trying to figure out who this killer is, and there's a conference call because after Perestroika they finally let him talk to the FBI to actually try and get some information about how these people think, and the FBI guy is talking about how, you know, he actually teaches a class and uses Stephen Ray's character as an example, and obviously Stephen Ray is quite emotional about that. So it's the kind of, it sounds bizarre, but to me it's one of the few serial killer films that's actually got a heart. We see the serial killer at work, but yes, he's a monster, but you can see his life and his family life, and obviously not condoning what he does, but again, it doesn't portray him as a complete, you know, just cartoonish monster. There's depth to his performance, and again, I've completely forgotten the actor who plays him, but he's in lots of Frank Darabont stuff, and he's always really good. And I'm now kicking myself for can't remember his name. It's just full of great performances. It's got great moments, and again, it's actually got a heart, which sounds bizarre because it's a serial killer film, but you really feel for Stephen Ray's character, and you're on his side. Oh, and I almost forgot, Max von Sydow is in it as a psychiatrist who tries to build a profile of the serial killer, and von Sydow is just absolutely brilliant, as he always is. Is Max von Sydow the greatest actor of all time? That's open to debate, because it's a brilliant scene in a lecture theatre where they kind of gather all these psychiatrists and professors, and they ask them for, you know, if any of them want to volunteer to help the police to try and create a picture of what this guy might be like. And of course they all just leave without speaking to them, and then Max von Sydow gets them afterwards. It's a great performance by von Sydow. What would you expect? The man's absolutely fantastic. So it's an absolute gem, and I'm not sure everybody has seen it. Because it's HBO, I'm not sure the chances it'll ever be on Blu-ray. But for me, it's one of the essential films on this list. And the next one is too. I'm going to try and be objective, but the next one on the list is John Sayles' City of Hope. This is a blank box because you can't get it on DVD, you can't get it on Blu-ray. This is a copy DVD that I have. I'm going to try and not going too much for rant about the lack of John Sayles films on even DVD and Blu-ray. City of Hope is one of his masterworks from 1991, and it's literally about how a city works, from the mayor's office to street level hoods. And again, it sounds, it's a bit dry, but again, John Sayles, his genius for creating characters that you just instantly root for, characters that you want to follow them for the rest of their lives, basically. This is a film about how we make deals and the deals we make with different people and the consequences of those deals and how it impacts ourselves, our moral fibre, our neighbours and strangers who live in our community. It's seen from the black point of view, the white point of view, the rich point of view, the poor point of view. Sales, I mean, people talk about Robert Altman being able to kind of mesh stories and intertwine stories. I mean, Altman's good. Obviously, people who love Altman will disagree. Altman's good. Sales is different level, because Sales as a writer is just, he's the best cinematic writer as far as what people say, which sounds daft, but he realises that people don't have like great speeches, people don't have, you know, people are just trying to get by, and it's difficult to sell John Sayles films because his films are political, his films are social, but he shows you people's lives, and because they're just so well written, you just immediately want to follow these people, are interested in these people, are fascinated by these people. He actually does a turn in this film as Carol, the owner of the garage, who's slightly shady, and it's a performance he gives with gusto. David Strathairn, Chris Cooper are in it as regular John Sayles. So if you've never seen a John Sayles film, chances are you might not actually be able to see City of Hope, but it may be available on streaming services, possibly, but try and check it out. Was that unbiased? I don't think that was very unbiased. I apologise if that was a little bit of a rant. Moving on, shall we? Because time's getting on and we're all not getting any younger. Next one is City of Lost Children by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro. This is the film they did after Delicatessen. And this is a fantasy epic. It's absolutely beautiful. Obviously Jean-Pierre Jeunet loves his greens and his browns and his reds. The palette in this is absolutely beautiful. It's the story of a strange place with a strange religion and a scientist who wants to dream, so he kidnaps children to try and learn how to dream. It has about 6 different Dominique Pignons. It has Jean-Louis Trintignant as a brain in a jar. It has Ron Perlman as a strongman. The score is just wonderful. There's a song by Marianne Faithfull. It's just an absolutely ravishingly beautiful film, and it's dark, it's funny. It's pretty much like Delicatessen, but there's more water in this one, and more Dominique Pignon. It's wonderful. It's a great experience. It's a great fantasy adventure, and it's fantastic. Next on the list is my favourite Spike Lee film, Clockers, starring Mickey Pfeiffer as a drug dealer trying to change his life, and with great support from Isaiah Washington, John Turturro and Harvey Keitel. It's beautifully shot, such vibrant colours, and it's got all of Lee's tricks, the fast cutting, the great soundtrack, but he reins himself in a little bit, because for me I feel a lot of Spike Lee's films need a little bit of editing. whereas Clockers is probably as close to perfection as Lee's going to get, I think. I haven't seen his later work. I did see Black Klansman, which was really disappointing because it has a problem with tone. As far as it plays like a black comedy, pardon the pun. But then at the end, it shows you what happened at the University of Virginia, in the KKK rallies. So it's suddenly, it's a black comedy and we're all laughing, and but we want to be taken seriously at the end. So Clockers was mid-90s even, and it's really good. It's really dark. Again, it's about the choices you make and the effects that those choices have on other people, and it's a really good film. Next on the list, don't laugh. Well, do laugh because it's a comedy. It's Clue, the movie. Now I've loved this film for probably 30 years or so. It's made in 1985. Did nothing at the box office. Was absolutely panned. Everybody hates it. So obviously I love it. It's one of the quintessential Tim Curry performances as Wadsworth, the butler, as he says in the film. He buttles. It's a comedy based on Cluedo. It has some of the best puns in cinema history. If you go with it, set in the 50s, if you go with it and enjoy it, it has different endings. You can have multiple endings, you can have random endings. Madeline Kahn, Colleen Camp, Leslie Ann Warren, Michael McKean, who gives a wonderful performance and has a brilliant last line. It has lines like, is the FBI in the habit of cleaning up after multiple murders? And of course, because they're run by a man called Hoover. It's that kind of level of humour. Yes, there's dog shit jokes, there's large chest jokes, there's some homosexual jokes. It's the greatest ironing board gag in cinema history as well. I think it has gained a cult following over the years, but ever since I was a young boy it had quite an effect on me, or maybe that was Colleen Camp in a French maid's outfit, I'm not quite sure. But if you're a fan of Tim Curry, it's a must own, because he's just absolutely fantastic. Clue. And just showing what a mixed bag this is, the film after Clue is Come and See. I don't want to talk too much about Come and See because I am stupidly going to do a video on Come and See, because for me, Come and See is the greatest war film ever made. From 1985. It's by Ellen Klimoff, and it just shows war as hell. The Come and See reference is from Revelations, and it is essentially a journey into hell. It follows a young bright-eyed boy seeking adventure, fighting the resistance in the forests, against the Nazis, and as the film progresses he ages and becomes old before our eyes. It's harrowing, it is hell, and it's kind of what war films should be, because obviously the Hollywood war film wants to have its cake and eat it. It wants to go, oh, war's terrible and we shouldn't have wars, but we kind of like guns and explosions and bombs and heroes. Come and See doesn't have any of that. Come and See just shows you brutality, horror. It can be a little overpowering. There's things you see out the corner of your eye that kind of stay with you forever. I mean, I haven't actually watched it for a while, but I still can see things. It's like Tarkovsky. You can still see things when you watch Tarkovsky films like years earlier. Come and See to me is the greatest war film of all time, and I will be doing a video of it shortly because I kind of feel I have to. Again, there's rumours that Criterion might be releasing it on Blu-ray. This DVD version is pretty good. It's not the greatest print, but it's pretty good. Because this really is a journey into hell. It shows the effect the war has on nature as well, which prefigures Terrence Malick in The Thin Red Line. It's just an experience, and it's not a feel-good experience. It's not an enjoyable experience because war isn't feel-good and it's not enjoyable, but for some reason we keep doing it. War films are weird because we keep making them, because we keep having wars and we never seem to learn. We fight over the smallest thing. Come and See. After Come and See, you probably won't want to come and see, but. And on a more upbeat note, The Conversation, which for me, I'm one of those strange people that doesn't think The Godfather is that good. I think they're good films, obviously, but for me, Apocalypse Now and The Conversation are far more interesting films by Coppola. Stars Gene Hackman, not my favourite actor in the world, as Harry Cole, a surveillance expert, and he's given the job of tailing this couple, and then he hears something. I mean, it's a film, again, that perhaps to a modern audience is difficult because not a lot happens. But if you pay attention, if you actually go with it and have patience, it is such a rewarding film. It's a great performance by Gene Hackman. There's an early cold performance by Harrison Ford. Robert Duvall turns up, and John Casales, who sadly made lots of great films in the 70s and then died. Yeah, there's not really that much to say about The Conversation. It sounds great, it looks great, the acting's great, and it's great. And again, just to change tack, the next one is Coraline, which is a children's film, supposedly, even though it's very, very dark. It's kind of stop motion-y, the animation. It's about this kind of boarding house out in the middle of nowhere, and it's about alternate realities. It's about child abduction and death. It's got ghosts. It's got a really creepy performance by Terry Hatcher. Yeah, it's one of those children's films that adults can get a lot out of, and I just think it's quite fantastic. Coraline. There's only 2 left, bear with me. And the next one, again, as far as I know, you can't get in Blu-ray. Please leave comments below if any of these films that I've said you can't get in Blu-ray, you can actually get in Blu-ray. Next one is Coupe de Ville by Joe Roth. This is from 1990, and it's a predictable road movie about bickering brothers driving their father's Coupe de Ville across country to their parents. It's predictable, but it still works. It's probably buoyed by a central performance of Alan Arkin as the father, who's absolutely fantastic. Daniel Stern, Ari Gross play two of the brothers. I think Patrick Dempsey might be the third one. And they bicker, they argue over pretty much anything: who's driving, what the meaning of the song Louie Louie is, and they get into various scrapes and adventures. It's just a great road movie, and of course at the end it's quite fantastic. People might say they can be cynical and say it's predictable, but it's such a fantastic ride along the way, and it certainly deserves a bit more exposure and a Blu-ray release. And finally, you'll be glad to know, Chronos by Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro's debut film, starring Federico Lippi, who was also in The Devil's Backbone, which for me is del Toro's best film. This is a riff on the vampire mythos, but there's no bats and fangs or anything like that. It's about a device that Federico Lippi finds, and Ron Perlman and his strange uncle want to get it off him. It's about sacrifice and family. It's just exquisitely beautiful. As we all know, Del Toro's Spanish films are better than his American films, and this is just beautiful. I think this was in my top 10 vampire films, even though it's not really your traditional vampire story, but it's just so beautiful, and the Criterion edition is absolutely sumptuous. Chronos, if you haven't seen it, it's well worth tracking down because it's quite beautiful. So thank you very much for watching this alphabet episode with the letter C. Please let me know in the comments below what your favourite films are beginning with the letter C, which ones I've missed out. I can hear all you fans of Chinatown screaming at me. Chinatown's a good film, just not one of my favourite films. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again for the letter D. This is Solitude saying farewell.